Begin, though, tonight on Capitol Hill with a congressional investigation into a big government loan award to a clean energy company that is now bankrupt and under investigation by the FBI. Solyndra is the company's name. Here are some pictures of President Obama visiting the Solyndra plant. That's May 2010, 8 months after the federal assistance was awarded. The company collapsed 2 weeks ago, leaving taxpayers liable for a whopping $535 million loan. One of its biggest investors is George Kaiser, who helped raise as much as $100,000 for the Obama 2008 campaign. Now, the White House says it did nothing wrong, and when the government invests in emerging technologies, it is inevitable some companies will fail. But some Republicans see it differently, very differently. They say the Bush administration was skeptical about Solyndra's viability, and now have emails from Obama administration officials suggesting the loan was rushed under White House pressure, despite appeals that it was, to quote one of those emails, again, this is from an Obama administration official, quote, not ready for prime time. To critics, the House handling of the Solyndra loan violates this pledge candidate Obama made again and again in 2008.
I am going to fight as hard as I can over the next 70 days to make clear to the American people that they deserve a president and a White House that is fighting for them. That's not fighting for the special interests. It's not fighting for the banks and the oil companies and the well-connected, but it's fighting for you.
At a minimum, the White House has some explaining to do. At first, it said it had no involvement in pushing the loan to the finish line, but emails subpoenaed by the committee show top White House aides, including former White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel, did get involved, asking, for example, if the White House could do anything to, quote, help speed along on the OMB side. The response, quote, I would prefer that this announcement be postponed. But the announcement went forward, and Vice President Biden participated with great fanfare.
So important we invest in Solyndra and invest in what Solyndra is doing.
Now Congress wants to see if undue political pressure was applied and find out why warning signs about the company were overlooked or played down.
In the time you've been there, you became aware of this. Did you begin to address these issues with Solyndra to say, show me the money?
Well, we talked, this staff talked with the company on a regular basis.
I really want you to stop throwing everybody else under the bus. I hear you throwing all your staff under the bus. I want to know, you're in charge, you've handled loans of this size, and now you're saying it's everybody else's fault but you.
The man heading that investigation is the Energy and Commerce Committee Chairman Fred Upton. We spoke a short time ago. Mr. Chairman, I want to get into the details in a second, but first I want to set the threshold question. Is your question whether political influence, campaign contributions had a role here, or is your biggest question whether the administration should have seen a flashing light saying this company was and not given them the money?
All of the above. From the way that I understand it, the Bush administration said there's not enough evidence for this thing to move forward. And they said that in early January of '09, before President Obama took office. 6 days after he takes office, they begin to reignite this whole episode. We've now seen the emails saying this is not ready for prime time. You know, what needs to happen? As our committee began to investigate the whole scenario, they then began to restructure the loan, which, by the way, is in violation of the law, and because the law clearly says that the taxpayer, if one of these companies goes belly up, the taxpayer comes first, not last. And so literally as we begin the investigation, they restructure the whole thing and the taxpayer ends up last. So not only do we have 1,100 people lose their job, the taxpayers lose maybe more than $500 million. All
right, let me come back.
And never ready for prime time is what their own internal memos were saying.
All right. Forgive me for interrupting, sir. Let's get back to the questions in order then. You say all of the above. Saying politics played a role, perhaps campaign contribution played a role, that's a big thing to say. We can have a question about whether they made a bad judgment, but what is the evidence that they were influenced by campaign contributions or politics of any kind?
Well, we'll see where the investigation takes us. We know that Mr. Kaiser was a major bungler for the Obama administration. We know that the White House logs show that he was at the White House a good number of times when this thing was proceeding again. We're going to be having the executives from the company. They've agreed to come testify next week for the Oversight Subcommittee Friday. They'll be sworn in, as all witnesses are, and we'll see where this takes us. But I think right now you have to look at all options are on the table as to how did this proceed and how did the taxpayer lose literally $500 million.
I want to read from one of the email exchanges that has people curious and some people suspicious of whether the White House was trying to help a donor. This is an email exchange, August 31. The special assistant to the then Chief of Staff, Rahm Emanuel, noted the Vice President's announcement at Solyndra. The Vice President was planning to go out there for a trip and asked whether, quote, there is anything we can help speed along on the OMB side. Essentially, the Chief of Staff's office saying, can we help speed the process up? Now, how is that any different? I bet your office from time to time has called, whether it's the Small Business Administration or the Veterans Administration, to help a constituent saying, hey, the bureaucracy's bugged up, gummed up, speed this up.
Look, when you're looking at $535 million, shouldn't someone be asking the question, is this viable or not? Particularly when the administration itself said, you know what, if this thing goes forward, they could be out of cash by September of 2011. That was 2 years, a year and a half before September 2011 came about. Their own stuff that they had showed that this was not perhaps going to be a viable company. Why then are they speeding forward? Why are they going against what the law says in terms of restructuring to try and push this before the evidence is there? We've seen evidence that they knew that, in fact, it cost $6 per panel and they were selling them for $3. Who makes money that way? The taxpayer loses.
We've dealt with the politics question, but I just want to ask you clearly, because people watch this home. You say you want to find out, you'll bring in the witnesses. As we speak today, you have zero evidence of any wrongdoing, correct? You just have suspicions?
Well, we've got now, you know, we tried to get the documentation early on. We scheduled hearings, and the administration literally didn't show up. They promised us that they were going to provide documents. They never came. Finally, we resorted to the last resort, and that was a subpoena. And in mid-July, we served a subpoena on the administration. It still took more than a month to get a lot of the stuff that was. And as we're examining now a lot of the stuff that we finally got, we're now finding these emails that nobody knew about before. So we're going to see exactly where this takes us. How did this thing get approved? And who made the decision to restructure the loan so that, in fact, at the end of the day, because they did go belly up, in direct contradiction to the Energy Policy Act of 2005, did someone make the decision to put the taxpayer last instead of first when they filed Chapter 11?
As you know, some of the Democrats on your committee say this is an overzealous Republican majority trying to embarrass the president and trying to advance some of your own policy decisions. Listen to your colleague, Ed Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts.
The majority has chosen to politicize this program, and it is attempting to discredit clean energy the same way they have tried to do to climate science. It is that simple. That simple.
Is it that simple?
This has nothing to do with climate science. This has everything to do with, are we going to support a company that is actually going to be able to pay the money back to the taxpayer? I support renewable energy. We had a key vote earlier this summer. I was a yes vote. It passed by 2 votes. This is appears to be, when the administration's documents themselves show that it's not viable, it's not ready for prime time, they're going to run out of cash by September of 2011. Who in their right mind would support then a $500 million loan that they know may never be paid back? And now, for these unfortunate 1,100 souls that work there, they're left with absolutely nothing at the end of the day.
The White House press secretary says this is what happens. This is how business works. You invest in 10 companies, 1 or 2 of them might fail.
Well, when they have the evidence to show that it's not going to succeed, why does someone push the button and move ahead? And was it just because it was a campaign donor? We'll find out.
What do you think?
I don't know. We'll find out. We're going to wait for all the evidence to come in.
Chairman Upton, appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks.
Still to come, another day, another 2012 battleground.